Hey, this is Jamie from Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to continue my Tales from Production of various Stonemaier games, featuring various sample components to tell stories about those components and decisions we made during the design and production process for My Little Scythe. My Little Scythe is kind of the family version of our game Scythe. This was designed by Hobie Chow and his daughter Vienna. And it's very similar to Scythe in terms of the core mechanisms, but they're distilled down so to essentially from a 32-page rulebook to an 8-page rulebook to give you an idea of how streamlined the mechanisms are in this game. It has a similar feel to Scythe, but it's also very much its own unique game. And originally, Hobie posted this as a print and play game on the Scythe Facebook group and on Board Game Geek and other places. And so many people really adored it that it got my attention. People kept posting about it. At that point, it was My Little Pony themed, and it really caught my attention. So I asked Hobie to send me a prototype, and I played it, and I was like, wow, this is actually a really good game in its own right, a really fun game in its own right. And we decided to end up publishing it. And eventually, we also published an expansion, Pie in the Sky, which so I'm going to talk about components from both the core game and the expansion here. So in my closet of secrets here, I have a lot of things that we went through as we discussed how to put this game together, and I'll talk about some of them today. So I'll just pick some random stuff here. So one of the things we looked at in My Little Scythe are these components that you pick up over the course of the game. You pick up apples and you pick up gems. And I can't remember where these wooden apples came from. I can't remember if we tested these or if they're from another game. I have a feeling they are from another game. And I like them so much that we considered making wooden versions of them for My Little Scythe. But because we were using crystals, in fact, these aren't even the final crystals. So this must be from a different game. I bet this is from Hobie's prototype, this original prototype. And it looks like in the original prototype, maybe he even had encounter tokens in the game, which ended up being maps in the final version of the game. So yeah, I think these were prototype tokens. And we ended up having plastic... we ended up going with plastic apples, and I'll mention one thing here about tokens in general. I find that they need to be 8 millimeters thick at minimum for a smaller token like this for you to be able to pick it up off the table. So 8 millimeters is the thickness that I always look for. It can also be 10 millimeters is a nice thickness, but 8 is enough. And then the gems look like this. So the final gems look like this. Don't have a great way of showing them on camera. There we go. And I believe I found these gems in the closet. I think we tested this color of gem too at one point. Or maybe we were just testing these for size. But we ended up going with these blue gems. So that's one thing I pulled out. One thing that Hope and I discussed quite a bit were the miniatures. So here are some of the miniatures from the game. And let me hold up two of them pretty close to the camera. Here are some early samples of... Actually, no, yeah, I have a separate story for that. But here's one of the miniatures here. And I'll hold up another one. So we're deciding, like, what color plastic should we use for these miniatures. So here are the two miniatures that are both yellow. These are functionally identical, but the colors are very slightly different. I don't know if you can see it here, but we decided to go with very slightly different colors of plastic for the two miniatures, just so if you wanted to, you can differentiate them thematically as different characters. But the colors are close enough that we aren't conveying to players that these are different entities, that these act differently because they are different colors. Because on your turn, you get to move both of these if you choose the move action. Let's see if I have a move. I don't have a move action handy here. But we just wanted to convey that they were functionally identical and not have totally different colors that might, totally different colors of plastic that might convey something different. So that was something we talked about quite a bit, Hobie and I. One thing we do during the the production process is test durability. And so when this miniature showed up with a broken hook, you can see the broken hook here, this was something I had asked Panda about. And I said, is this, obviously this isn't durable enough. It didn't pass the shake test. And so let's boost the durability a little bit. And it actually looks like not much changed about the final version. I think maybe they said, okay, we think it is durable enough. But in the test version of the plastic, it's a little bit harder, a little bit more brittle than the final version of the plastic. So Uh, yeah, I guess that ended. I was thinking that it would end up a little bit different, but essentially it is the same miniature, just without many changes. But sometimes they'll go in and they'll add thickness to it. So they might have added a little bit of thickness to where the hook meets the base here to prevent it from breaking free. In general, I think our sculptor, a guy named Heriberto, does a wonderful job with these miniatures. One thing we test is the dice. So the dice were a big part of the decision process for My Little Scythe. So the final dice end up looking like this. I'll pull out a few of them here. So we have 3 different dice that you roll. We have this kind of marbled golden die, and we have the red die and the blue die here. And this was a debate that we had during the design process, like exactly what colors should we show on these dice so that it's clear. Actually, there's one other die here for the expansion. There's a purple die there. But exactly what colors do we use for the different sides here? As you can see, the blue and the green ended up pretty similar. Probably too similar. But that's something that we look at very closely, both from a color blindness perspective and just a low light perspective, to see even the red. So the red, the blue, and the green are very similar. And we try not to do that, but we puzzled around with different ways of making these dice. We even tested an actual golden die here for the encounter die. But we puzzled around with different ways of making these dice, because in My Little Scythe, the idea is that when you seek, you roll some dice and you place resources on the board based on the region that you roll. So if you seek apples, you'll roll these dice, and based on the colors that come up, so if you roll white, then you'll put an apple in the white region. And so we puzzled around with different ways to do that, and this is the way that we settled upon doing it. But I can see in low lighting how it can be a little bit of a challenge there. We also, one of the other color debates we had, as we debated what colors to use for these components, was related to the ship in High in the Sky. So here's what the final ship looked like. And there were a lot of considerations that went into this, both in terms of the construction for it and the color for it. So one challenge we had is that we had this beautiful insert in My Little Scythe designed by Noah at Game Tree. So here's what the insert looks like. Things are sliding around a little bit because we had to put expansion components in here. But Noah designed this insert in the hopes that it would contain expansion components someday, particularly the top part of the insert that had 2 slots specifically for the additional seekers that we intended to add to the game. But designing an insert, a precise insert like this for an expansion, is really tough, and sometimes it can actually constrain the design of the expansion. And in this case, like Hobie designed My Little Scythe, he didn't know what was going to come next. And eventually he came upon the idea that he wanted to have an airship in the expansion, a single airship. And so he decided that the airship could fit in the box, you can see it down here, if it actually split in half for storage purposes. So the airship splits in half so you can fit it down into the insert here. And so it was just an interesting area of design where Hobie was really trying to respect the design of the original insert, and it was a design constraint for him in deciding that unlike the Wind Gambit, the Scythe equivalent of Pie in the Sky, unlike the Wind Gambit, every player doesn't get their own airship, and so there's one airship that is controlled by all players, which also adds an interesting element of player interaction, that all players are steering around this one airship instead of each player having their own airship. But it ended up with this airship that actually splits in half. You can see if you look closely, there's a line going through it. The color we also debated quite a bit. So it starts off, when you have a miniature like this, you start out with a 3D printed version of it, kind of a pale, almost translucent white version of it. And then I think the first color we tried was this pink. I think that was first. And there was something about this pink that just didn't feel right. We couldn't quite even put our finger on what it was. It looked almost medicinal. I don't know, it felt too pink. And so we tried a darker purple, and this was nice. I can't remember why we didn't go with this one, because this is a nice purple. I think it's probably too close to one of the Seekers. And so we ended up going with this light purple. Yeah, this is the sample. This is the final version here. I think they're functionally identical and aesthetically identical too. But this is one of the other considerations, like just testing different colors to see which one feels right, and to make sure that this color doesn't match any of the colors that we already have in the game for the Seekers. And I think this is why we didn't do the purple one, because as you can see here, there is a purple Seeker up here. And so we didn't want to confuse players by saying, okay, this one's purple, that one's dark purple, they must be related to one another. We wanted to remove that visual confusion and have a color that we hadn't already used in the game. Really, we look at colors a lot in any game, including My Little Scythe. These are all these different color samples that we get from Panda when we're choosing different colors for things. I think these are even 3 different versions of the color red that are super, super close to one another. But yeah, we think about these color things quite a bit. We don't always get them right, but we think about them quite a bit. During the production process, we also get white copy samples, so we can see how easy they are to pick up, if we have the right sizes for them, how they fit into the insert, things like that. I think that's actually all the components. This is one of the shorter versions of these videos because I don't have a ton of other components to share that I can see here. But yeah, those are the component samples that we got from My Little Scythe that I still have it in my closet of secrets back there. That some of them impacted the design process, the design constraints for the expansion, and some of them were related to the original game. So if you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below. Thanks.